Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are digging into what is hands down one of the most rewarding, dynamic ways you can play on the Immortal Realm, the Animal Tamer build. Now, think of this less as your typical MMO class and more like stepping into the boots of a tactical field commander. You aren't the one out there wildly swinging a sword in the middle of a mob. Instead, you're the brain of the operation. You're managing the battlefield, positioning your forces, and keeping everyone alive while your carefully curated pets do the absolute heavy lifting. It is a wildly different, completely satisfying way to experience PvE, and today, we're going to break down exactly how you can master the whole shebang.
So here is our roadmap for the journey. First up, we'll cover core skills and target stats. Second, surviving the taming grind. Third, choosing and managing pets. And we'll wrap up with gear, gold, and endgame. Let's get right to it. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, core skills and target stats. Okay, let's take a look at the skill template here. As a tactician, you're working with a hard cap of 700 skill points, so every single choice matters. There is a non-negotiable holy trinity here, okay? Animal taming, animal lore, and veterinary. You absolutely need all three of these maxed out at 100. Taming and lore are what actually let you command and bond with the beasts, while that 100 vet is literally what keeps them from dropping dead in the heat of a fight. Next up, you'll want Magery and resist spells sitting somewhere between 80 and 100 for your own personal utility and, well, staying alive. Throw in 80 music, which acts like a gateway for other skills, and 60 meditation just to keep your mana regenerating. Now, here's where it gets really cool. If you do the math, this core setup only eats up about 600 to 640 of your base points. That leaves you a super crucial buffer of 60 to 100 unspent points. Keeping those in reserve is a massive strategic advantage because it lets you adapt later on, maybe pushing meditation higher or pivoting into totally different support skills. Now, supporting that skill setup requires a very specific stat distribution. Looking at this, you might be thinking, wait, why is intelligence maxed out at 100 instead of strength? Well, it's because mana is your absolute lifeblood. That 100 intelligence is critical for the massive mana pool you're going to burn through to support your pets in long, grueling fights using Magery and, healing them. You'll bring strength up to a respectable 80, mainly for hit points, and because all those vet bandages you have to carry get really heavy. And you just leave dexterity at a modest 45, which is just enough for casting speed. Basically, your mind is your main weapon here. Moving right along to Section 2, surviving the taming grind. Look, we need to address the elephant in the room right now. This build is notoriously brutal to train. We just need some radical candor about the time commitment here. You are looking at a staggering 150 to 250 hours to hit Grandmaster. Yeah, the early stages, they fly by, but I gotta warn you, the stretch from 70 to 100 taming is the longest, most painful bottleneck in the entire template. The gains slow down to a crawl by design, so you are going to need immense patience. But hey, don't let that massive number scare you off. We can take that overwhelming grind and break it into 6 totally doable steps. You aren't starting with dragons, right? Step 1, you just pay NPC trainers to bump you to 30 skill in taming, lore, and vet. Super easy. Step 2, you head out and tame simple, small animals in the wild to push that to 50. Then for step 3, you pivot slightly to pet care, getting lore and vet up to 60 so your early pets can actually survive real fights. Step 4 brings you to 80 taming, which finally unlocks mid-tier pets. At step 5, you take a quick breather to level Magery to between 60 and 80 for crucial recall and heal spells. And finally, step 6 is that glorious final push to 100 taming and lore. When you follow this exact roadmap, going from paying basic NPCs to commanding a greater dragon feels entirely manageable. So as you gear up for this grind, you're probably asking a question that almost every solo PvE player wrestles with at some point. Tamer or Bard? Which one is actually the right fit for you? Let's compare them side by side. As a Tamer, you command pets to fight directly for you. It is a very durable, direct action style where you are relying on the sheer brute force and loyalty of your beast. A Bard, on the flip side, uses music to manipulate enemy mobs into attacking each other. That gives you a ton of flexibility when dealing with massive mixed groups of enemies. So really, it comes down to choosing your flavor of control, direct command or manipulation. But remember those reserve skill points we talked about earlier? Because you already have 80 music in your Tamer template, you can actually use those extra points to absorb 80 provocation, meaning you can hybridize, you can manipulate mobs, and command pets at the same time. You literally don't have to choose. All right, let's dive into Section 3, choosing and managing pets. This is the part where things get incredibly fun. Let's look at your evolutionary ladder. In the beginning, from 0 to 50 taming, you're running around with cats, dogs, and, this is huge, the pack llama, which is an absolute lifesaver for carrying loot. Then from 50 to 70, you're upgrading to wolves, hellhounds, polar bears. Pushing 70 to 90 is where it gets real, unlocking frenzied ostards and dread spiders. But 90 to 100, that's the sweet spot. We're talking white worms and lesser dragons. And finally, breaking past 100, you are totally dominating the map with top-tier beasts like crater dragons and swampies. You are literally climbing the food chain.
I do want to take a second to highlight one very specific, amazing milestone on this journey, though. The Coos Psy Dog. This is the absolute classic I have one good pet choice, and you can grab one right at 90 taming. For players who just want a super durable, incredibly reliable companion without dealing with the danger of hunting down top-tier dragons, the Coos Psy is your ultimate mid-game goal. It hits like a truck, it refuses to die, and it's fiercely loyal. Now, obviously, you can't bring the whole zoo into battle with you, which brings us to stable strategy. You've got a maximum of 5 stable slots. First off, and I literally cannot stress this enough, pet bonding is mandatory. Do not skip this. Once a pet is bonded, you can resurrect it if it dies. If an unbonded pet drops in battle, poof, gone forever. Do not let 50 hours of training vanish because you forgot to bond. So with your 5 slots, a smart player keeps 1 active main combat pet, 1 backup combat pet stabled for emergencies, 1 transport pet like a pack llama for supply runs, and 1 specialty pet, say something with high poison resistance for very specific dungeon runs. Just manage those slots carefully.
Finally, Section 4. Gear, gold, and endgame. All that grinding pays off big time when you look at how your wealth and gear scale. You start out pretty humble, just basic cloth armor, a stack of 100 bandages, maybe a cheap pet whistle. By the mid-game, you're stepping into magic armor, stacked with mana attributes to feed that 100 intelligence stat. But the late game, that's where you become a literal god on the battlefield. You are aiming for a time-woven augmented suit, and most importantly, the Beast Bond charm. This charm is a total game changer because it perfectly integrates into the Beast Collection layer of the game, letting you use marks of trust to take your pet bonding to crazy new heights.
Let's talk economics, because funding a tamer is surprisingly lucrative. In the early game, selling to NPC vendors is a joke, so you make your gold by selling your freshly tamed starter pets directly to other players. Mid-game, you can actually set up a side hustle, pet sitting, or selling nicely trained mid-tier beasts. And by the late game, you're trading high-end greater dragons and soloing deep dungeon bosses for insane loot. Your skills have major real-world market value in the game. A pet with 90-plus skill goes for a premium to players who just didn't want to endure that 200-hour grind you just conquered. Supply and demand at its finest.
Now, before we wrap up, we need a quick reality check on vulnerabilities. Every good commander knows their weak spots. Weakness 1, slow taming gains. The fix, pure patience, or bringing a friend along to just sit there and heal you. Weakness 2, the dreaded pet death panic. Mitigate this by always carrying resurrect bandages and making sure your vet skill stays at 100. Weakness 3, swarms. Your one massive dragon will get overwhelmed by dozens of tiny mobs, so you have to step up and use your Magery AoE spells to thin the herd. And finally, solo PvP exposure. Tamers are super vulnerable alone in unrestricted PvP zones like Felucca. The mitigation here is simple. Bring backup. Never, ever go into Felucca alone.
The Tamer template is incredibly resilient, and it's going to keep you relevant for a very long time. But eventually, you'll hit the absolute pinnacle of the Immortal Realm, and you'll have to make a choice about your character's final form. So I'll leave you with this. When you hit that true endgame, are you going to dive deeper into the Beast Collection system to totally maximize your Beast Bond? Or are you going to take those reserve points, drop music entirely, and pivot into a pure, hard-hitting combat build? The absolute best part about being a tamer is that the choice is entirely yours. So get out there, grab a pet whistle, and start the grind.